chapter 3, verse 35, reminded us what matters most at an individual level. And it called it Swadharma. Your own part to play in this world. Everyone has an own part to play. Your part is different from your siblings' part, from your parents, from the people that you know. No one quite has the exact same part to play. This means that while living on Earth, being given the ability to do and contribute, this ability, Krishna says, it's better to be done in a mediocre fashion than mimicking somebody else's work because they're good at it. And it may be tempting to take up their work because they're getting the accolades and the attention and, all the looks are on one person. You think, I want to be like them. However, Krishna says, if you do that, you're neglecting something very important, and that is your nature. So he uses two important words. He uses duty, what you do. This is called Swadharma. And then he says this Swadharma is based on your Swabhava. Another word for Swabhava is Prakriti. But we're not speaking of Prakriti now, the macrocosm. We're speaking just nature, your nature. Now, Swabhava and Prakriti, in simple English, just means your inclinations, your strengths, and what is natural to you, what's easy and relatively simple for you. The question is this: why are you doing what you're doing right now? I know you could do 5 different things, but here's something in common amongst all those 5 different things. They will all share, they will all reflect your nature. Why is someone doing software development or engineering and not something more artistic? Why is that? The question is, why are you doing that? So now he brings a second word and he says, because of your Swabhava. 2 different words. So what you do is your Swadharma. That's your duty. That's what you do every day. But the question is, what makes you do that? Your nature, your Swabhava. So now what is Swabhava? Inclinations, desires, what you're naturally talented at, what you're kind of turned off by. It's like 2 siblings are born in the same family. By the time they reach 15, they're doing different things. But now, why are they doing different things? Because the nature they came with and the nature they got inculcated since a child caused them to do what they're doing right now. So in that same way, why are you, one of the many individuals in this world, doing what you're doing? So now what Krishna says is, if you look around and you see someone who's got some wonderful, duty, and their duty is bringing so much rewards, and you try to be like them, even entertain to do that, this will not work, because your nature is very different from somebody else's nature. Now you say, so what? What's the point of saying this? How does this help me? Well, you are doing what you're doing according to your nature. If you were to do somebody else's work, it would not work. Though you imagine it, it would work, right? You imagine it, I will be so much happier if I do his or her work. If I am in that position, in that level of the corporate structure, I will be so much happier. But Krishna says you wouldn't. Like, why? Because they are at that position or in that kind of work because of the traits that they have developed for a lifetime, and you don't have those traits. So if you go and try to replicate somebody else's work, then what's going to be demanded of you? Traits which you have not developed. Therefore, Krishna says, do the work according to the traits that you have developed and worked on, and that will give you satisfaction, which is wonderful. It kind of makes you relax now, that what you're doing isn't as bad as you thought it was. Sometimes we're like, oh, I should be doing something better. I'm not happy with my work. But now you're like, well, maybe I am doing this because it correlates with my nature. And it may not be kind of the biggest thing in the world. It may not be a popular thing. But if I were to do something popular, the irony is it will be fraught with fear, with disappointment, because the kind of demands that will be upon you will be unnatural to you. Details. I'm not into details. Well, why not? You wanted this position. I know I want this position. Well, then you need to be into details. Yeah, but I don't like details. You see? Conflicts. So on one hand, I want the big position. On the other hand, I don't have what it takes to live out that position. That is why Krishna says, if you try to mimic someone that's good, you may get away with it for 5 days until you discover the kinds of details and demands that are required upon you. It is going to just crumble you down to the ground. Your spirits will be stripped out of you. So I say, well, this is wonderful. Maybe what I'm doing is already what is supposed to be done. Maybe I can just kind of relinquish my complaints and make the best of what I'm doing right now. So this is an important message from Krishna to get this idea of, imagining like some always grass is green on the other side. This is this idea that it's better. If you try to do that, go ahead. You may find that you may benefit, but according to the verse, according to my own experience, it's not going to work very well. There was a couple of years ago, 15 years ago, actually, I was into internet marketing, copywriting, wholesale retail, and internet hosting. So many businesses at once. So I was, natural at that, and I still am. And people saw this, so they were very interested, and they said, Andre, can you show me how to make money, right, online? And I said, absolutely, I love to do this stuff. And one of the couples, they really liked me, and I really liked them. I was 24. And so they invited me to their home 4 days a week. We were like, I was like their child now. They were so close. And we were hanging out all day for 3 months. And what I was doing was sitting down on the table and showing the husband how to sell online on eBay. And that required copywriting, graphic design, incredible attention to detail, lots of patience, up to 2 weeks. See, we didn't have AI back then. You had to write your own sales letter, and you have to really learn how to, be patient to refine the headline and the call to action and building up the desire and the interest. All of this was part of it. So I was doing this for 4 months, and I discovered within 4 months, this guy was not successful at all. He was depending upon me to do everything for him. The moment I said, I've shown you now for three months, you need to put a nice border around the product so it's seen to the eyes. He was not doing any of that. And I realized this is because though I was successful and I was showing him exactly how to replicate what I was doing, he couldn't do it. But he wanted to be like me. Why couldn't he do it? Because
he didn't have it.
He didn't have it. Attention for detail, graphic design, hard work. He wanted a quick way. He just wanted to pick up the phone call because he was a real estate agent. It's totally different personalities. Once pick up the phone call, make a few deals, close the sale, boom, done. You got $1 million. But that's not my way. So you can see what happens. Even if you get offered a certain method, proven step-by-step method, and you follow it, you will find yourself probably not doing as well as others. And you say, why? Is something wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. What is wrong instead is you're doing something that doesn't complement your nature. Therefore, Krishna says, go and find something that complements your nature. If there's a misalignment, it is fraught with disappointment and failure. Now, the question is, what makes you engage in not your duty? We call this paradharma. What makes you skip doing what you have to do? What makes you not do the right thing? And this will be in the next verse, verse 36. And Arjuna will ask a question. Arjuna uvacha atakena prayukto yam papam charati purushaha anichannapi varshneya bala divaniyojitaha.
Arjuna said, Varsnya, Krishna, impelled by what does a person commit sin, as though pushed by some force, even though not desiring to?
Interesting question. So what commits us to do the wrong thing? To follow somebody else's path? What is this mysterious force that causes one to act inappropriately against one's own better judgment? Knowing that what you're doing is incorrect, despite that, you still do what you know is incorrect. What is this force that causes this seemingly external force that pushes me into wrongdoing? Though I know that it's going to lead to wrongdoing, I still get pushed into that. And see, if we look throughout the Mahabharata or anywhere in the world, it's the same categories. You have two general categories of people. Yeah, the first one is Duryodhana. Now, Duryodhana is a kind of man who is, like the rest of us, given privileges, and they're so kind of consumed in their world of fancies and likes and dislikes that they get covered by what is the right thing to be done. It's not even a question of being, trying. It's just that I don't really care about the consequences. I just want to feel good, what is right for me, what's pleasing. And I don't really, think about the impact of my words to the larger whole. And if I say something, how it impacts the children of our age and what consequences it will have in the future, this is none of my concern. I just say whatever is on my mind. And they call this, spontaneous, maybe. They will call this, I'm a man of my word. I don't, I'm not a coward. I say what I want. So we always explain this, by adding these words behind it to justify. So this is Duryodhana. Now, the second type is Arjuna. Arjuna is the kind of person who knows what is right and wrong, generally, and is genuinely and sincerely doing the best in life and attending and has consistency, dedication, and despite all of that, has heard the Gita and is hearing the wisdom. With all of that in his or her life, still makes mistakes knowingly, comes to a point where he or she knows, if I do what I'm about to do, it's not going to be a good result, right? It's just not right. It's silly. It's short term. It's maybe just a quick, right, moment of sensual gratification. I know that. But despite all of that, you still do it. That's Arjuna. And most are Arjuna's type. So now, Arjuna wants to change. He cares deeply about his or her progress. They pray to the bottom of their heart. They want to make a difference. God, I want to, be more, empathetic or more, kinder or more disciplined or to be, less pushed about by these desires. I want that. And then you say that, but then later on, moments on, a few hours later, you still do it. Of course, you say to yourself, oh, it's just one time, tomorrow I'll get better. Tomorrow, this is the last time I'll do it. Tomorrow will be my fresh start. Tomorrow, the whole story repeats again. Oh God, please, Om Namah Shivaya, may this be removed from my mind, Gam Ganapate Namaha, may these obstacles be removed from my life. Dum Durgaya Namaha, may Durga give me the strength of the discipline to sustain this. And you're like, I'm convinced the Lord has touched me. I am now finally free tomorrow comes, a new temptation arises. You kind of think about it a little bit. It starts to grow in your mind. Slowly, slowly, you start to move in the direction of what you're not supposed to do. And suddenly, like a dream, you find yourself in it. It grows so gradually. It's almost like you open your eyes and you're suddenly in it. There's no build-up. It's just in it. And you're like, oh God, now I have to kind of explain this out. It's okay, you know, I am the self. I'm free of all of this. Nothing touches me ultimately. But honestly, if you're totally brutally honest to yourself, you find this disturbing because you know that there is a better way. And yet there's a force that holds you down, and it's so hard to move away from that force. That's Arjuna's situation. So Krishna will answer, what is this force? But for now, what can you do, suppose? We ask the question in reference to when you see, you know, this temptation to say something, someone's disagreeing with you, and you've kind of cleared your, right, your buddhi is clear, and you want to say something. You can absolutely say something, right? Do what needs to be said. But to come from a place where I know it all, that's already that temptation. I know it all. Therefore, I'm going to come from that place. You know, if you come from that place, it's not going to come out right that I know it all. But then you still come from that place that, you know, I'm going to tell you because I've been listening to the classes every week and I've got the Gita in my life and I'm going to come from this place. And when you do, the results are not so pretty. And you already knew that the results won't be pretty. But something made you act despite. So we can do what we can do. You can say what you have to say. I can have patience and I can have empathy towards all beings. Why? Because as long as we are alive, we're on the same boat. Your journey, you really are only free once your physical body goes horizontal. As long as we are vertical, we are literally everyone at all corners of Earth are on the same boat, figuring out this complex world of options and you know, trying to resolve it and make the best that you can. And it's not easy because boats are sometimes kind of, you know, friction against each other. They're hitting each other. And you just generally behind all of that just want peace and stability and unity. Okay? But as much as you try, it's not easy. So all of us are ultimately on the same place. Even if you have read all the scriptures, nobody knows everything. So this much I can use to help me not to be so tempted by this compelling force that will speak in a condemning way, perhaps, to someone, or to compare in an unfair way. So now, Krishna will answer, what is this force? He also reminds us that the whole Gita is not about others out there. It is about you. What is your responses, your perceptions about the world? You see, the world has no power to turn you into, to make you feel anything. It has no power. The world has no power to make you think or feel in a certain way. Who has that power? I, who am standing right here and now. You know, sometimes we have, for context, this idea that there are people out there who are controlling me. You know, there's invisible forces, the Illuminati, right? The New World Order people, the lizards, right? Call them whatever you want. The secret agents, you know, behind the curtains, and they are the billionaires, the Rockefellers, the etc. We create these imaginary names, and then we say, you know, they are that force, that external force, which is making me do these silly things. Okay, just for a moment, where is that person, that powerful person who's calling the shots and puppeting everyone? Where are they in your life on a daily basis?
In your mind?
Exactly. Are they next to you when you're sitting on the sofa? which is probably most of the time, right? Are they when you're at work at the cubicle? Are they like next to you, you know, whispering bad words? Oh, you're a loser, you're nobody, you will fail. Are they there? Are they at your dinner table when you're eating or at morning breakfast and just kind of feeding you these negative words, telling you to fail? Are they there when you just lie down at the end of the day in a warm bed, move the, you know, the nice heaviness of that blanket over you and you just want to lie down, fall asleep? Are they there bothering you? Where are they? In other words, you see, we become the victim. We become the victim to our own inner imagination of these so-called external forces that are pushing me and making me do all these bad things. It's just a story created in the mind, and I become a victim to the people in my mind. But you're never the victim. You have absolute decision ability to say, I choose not to think like this. Today, I choose to wake up and may good things come to me and may good things flow from me. You can wake up and say, today, I choose to be open like a sponge and seeing the presence of Ishvara in all beings. If I can do that just to one being, I have successfully lived out my day. Today, I will wake up and I will see behind that tree that it's just not a tree, it's much more than a tree. Today, I will look at the food, and instead of just airplane moding that food, I will stop for a moment and say, thank you to those invisible farmers who are working so hard to make this happen. And I would thank the sun and the air and the wind and the rain that is falling, that it's not just the air and the sun, it is glories of Ishvara manifesting as that. Otherwise, you become the victim. Oh, rain falls. Oh, rain. Oh, run for cover. It's so much more than rain. In other words, we become a victim to this invisible force. And what is it? Verse 37, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kama Esha Krodha Esha Rajo Guna Samudbhava Mahashano Mahapapma Vidyenam Iha Vairinam.
Sri Bhagavan said, this desire, this anger, born of the guna rajas, is a glutton and a great sinner. Know that to be the enemy here in this world.
Exactly what we just said. It wants to shift your perception from blaming external, so-called external forces, which are causing me to do the wrong action, to knowing that the true enemy is none other than your desire alone. Where does desire happen? In me. It's always right here, right now. There's no external Satan sitting on the tree who's grabbing an apple with an invisible chain that's, you know, fishing me inwards and causing me to take the apple. Even if he was sitting on the tree, it is my desire alone that makes me, causes me, tempts me to take that apple and that property which doesn't belong to you and, you know, pretend like it's yours. That's your thing. It's not someone else. I can show you an apple right now. See, apple represents something that you think is valuable, right? Even though it's just value neutral, it's just an apple. So I'll show you an apple. Right now, you have a choice. You can say, oh, you know, I'm going to grab this apple and just, you know, for my own ends, for my own kind of, you know, to grab that and enjoy it. Or no, this apple is number one, not mine. Number two, there is someone who needs this apple much more than I. There's someone who can benefit from this apple much more than I can. That's a mind of a wise person. A non-wise person, oh, apple, me, always connects the object in presence to the person. A wise person says, who else needs this apple? Who can benefit from this apple much more than I can? Because they know that they are not outside of Ishvara's order. Thus, if someone benefits more, ultimately, that comes back to me in an invisible manner. Invisible, Dayananda has this nice way of saying, there's no invisible satanic force, you know, somewhere out there. because there's only Bhagavan. There's no second thing. And Bhagavan always manifests as harmony. So Bhagavan knows not anything but harmony. Any kind of disharmony that is created by misalignment to harmony. So there's no satanic force out there causing some voodoo people in the distance of some lands, performing some voodoo magic, making me suffer, keeping me down and locked and unable to, have a good, clear mind. There's no one out there. And this is wonderful to hear, because as long as there's an invisible force created in your mind and you're holding onto it, I tell you, that is the ultimate form of self-limitation. Because no matter then what comes to our lives, we always kind of backtrack and say, yeah, but I can't because there's some force, some, in a different language, some karma that's pushing me down and it's not allowing me to flourish like a flower. This is only in your mind. If Bhagavan only knows and only wants, not that Bhagavan is an entity, but if it only wants goodness, because it manifests as harmony, then how can you say that this harmony is real? If Bhagavan only manifests as harmony and unity and peace, then how can you say that pain and suffering and discord and disharmony is real? But it is real, isn't it? It's real for you. So who has created, who has given it reality? Who has created another entity other than Bhagavan? My own mind has. And when it does that, what ensues? Pain. And what is that pain telling me? Telling you that I am not in touch with Ishvara. Because Ishvara only manifests as harmony and peace and stillness. Anytime there is absence of harmony, peace, and stillness in your mind, since that is not the nature of Ishvara, it thus must be the nature of my own self-created limitation, which in that moment I have disconnected, distanced myself from that which is there underneath Ishvara. Every single time you feel pain and you take that pain to be real, what you are really saying in that moment is that Ishvara is not real and this pain is real. So here's a little litmus test for you. What causes suffering and pain? From your experience, what causes suffering and pain? Psychological.
Non-acceptance of the situation and wanting it to be different.
Got it. Non-acceptance of the situation, wanting it to be different. And what would that imply? That Ishvara is presenting me one thing, but my mind is disconnecting and it's saying what should otherwise happen is this. Does that sound like arrogance? Of course it does. That's the ultimate form of arrogance. In other words, I am smarter than what is presented before me, and what I expect is something very different than what's presented before me. So every time I resist, in other words, there's a dislike of the situation, or it bothers, or it stands out, or there's kind of pushing it away, resisting it away. That's called non-acceptance of the situation. What you're really saying is, though Ishvara is presenting circumstances that I need to go through, what I'm doing instead is saying, Ishvara, I am smarter than you. I'm smarter than you, the one who is presenting me this situation that I need to pass, that I need to resolve so that I may move forward in my ways of thinking. I need to move that. I need to resolve that. But I'm smarter than that. What I want instead is that this needs to happen. And that is when you miss your learning. So here's another question for you. When a difficult situation comes in your life, how do you know that you have truly passed that situation? that you have done the best that you could, and that situation, that difficulty, ended up being your blessing. What determines whether a challenging situation was just one more challenging situation to bother you, or whether it was a blessing, whether it taught you something more, whether you improved and grown as a result of it? What is that litmus test, Michael?
That you're okay with it, and that you know that you're not ruminating on it.
You accept whatever is happening to you as the will of the God, and you do your duty without feeling any pain or pleasure. And if you do that, what is called in Sanskrit titiksha,
Yeah.
if you develop titiksha, that means you have survived the God's test, and you will probably come out with flying colors.
When you no longer moan and groan about it, but go about whatever that has to be done cheerfully.
Could it be that when the pain or the suffering may still exist, however, it's known not to be me or mine?
Good. These are all good indicators of whether you are passing the situation in a manner that you're meant to pass, or whether it's just one more thing that's going to bother you. And next time it happens, it's going to bother you again. So the question is, what would you have to do in reference to a difficult situation that next time it happens, you don't call it a difficult situation anymore?
All the answers that we heard in the last question, they will come from only intense faith in Ishvara. Otherwise, there is no power in the self to just outgrow the pain or suffering and say that I'm supposed to be having samatvam or equanimity or titiksha. It has to come only for very intense faith.
Okay. And when you say faith, Gautam, what do you mean by faith? So we can be a little bit more tangible with that word.
Faith means that this is the will of the God. This is my prarabdha. This has been designed, and since it is the will of the God, I should go through this willingly. Ishvara Prasad Buddhi.
Okay.
A sense of understanding that the situation must present something good in a form of learning for myself. So kind of look into the situation and actually analyze, how am I improving in this situation? What's the lesson in that situation?
Brilliant. Okay.
First of all, I find these verses, I've always found these verses very difficult. The same thing is in the Bible about this problem that people have, why do you do what you do? And, one thing I guess, I don't know, we haven't talked about this, but this is the word conscience. I mean, it's like, I know personally me, when I do something wrong,
Yeah.
pretty soon my conscience starts bothering me. I know it wasn't right.
Right.
I can make excuses, but I know it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And that's like Arjuna too. He wants to do what's right. And then you contrast that to Duryodhana. I mean, I don't know, in a biblical sense, he's an evil person. He doesn't want to do what's right. Krishna talks to him and he says, "Oh, I know what's right. I know what I should do. I
Yeah.
don't want to do it."
Yeah.
And he's like what we would call an evil person. If you ran into him at the office, he might be a real psychopath. I mean, he'd do anything. He'd stab you in the back, whatever, and and then I get down to, okay, so what's Duryodhana's Swadharma? I mean, is his Swadharma being an evil person?
Okay, good question. Yeah,
Andre,
yeah, go ahead.
she's saying something, making a distinction between Shreyas and Preyas.
Yeah.
So if you are succumbing to Preyas, then you are succumbing to the desires.
Okay, see, the little thing that I have against this, about this, is that we kind of step into territory of black and white now. Let me show you how what the Mahabharata really wants to show you is that everyone succumbs to as Krishna calls these enemies, that inner binding desire. Okay, let's look at Bhishma. Bhishma is call it the good guy, right? The good guy. So let's see if we can categorically call Bhishma the good guy. Okay, so Bhishma, out of his, so-called wisdom, said, I'm going to protect Hastinapur and I'm going to keep everyone safe and at all costs. That's what he said. That was his claim. Krishna then said, yes, that's a very noble goal, but you have no obligation to protect an unrighteous king who's ruling that which you want to protect. Now, Bhishma, in his rigidity, he says he couldn't kind of connect to this. And so he said, no, I am just going to protect because that's my vow. What does this show you? It shows you even a wise person can succumb to rigidity of what is natural, dharma. And in reference to that rigidity, we call that, in Carey's language, quote, evil. But I wouldn't call it evil, I would just call it confused. Karna was loyal, right? He was like, it's a great trait to be loyal and committed and dedicated to someone. And Krishna says, look, you have a very wise outlook on life and you have dedication and commitment to your friend because you were kind of, a little bit felt abandoned and alone and nobody recognized you. Now, when you went to that archery with, the Pandavas, Duryodhana recognized you and you naturally having that craving for that love and validation, Duryodhana took you in. Very soon, you saw, coming as a good-hearted individual, you saw that man to whom you got devoted to was doing misdeeds that you did not agree with. But because of your need for validation and your love, you saw past all of that and you decided to stick with him. Now, can you say categorically good or bad? Or it has to do with something even deeper, denying one's love that everyone wants and needing that so much. I think sticking with Duryodhana is worth it, despite my conscience saying this is the wrong thing to do. Then you had Draupadi. Draupadi, see, one last time negotiation that Krishna went to the Hastinapur to try to get some land back for the Indraprastha, for the Pandavas. What did Draupadi do? She stopped him and said, hey, Krishna, don't go and talk with the Kauravas, because if you convince them out of this war, then I'm not going to get my revenge, because I want to see Duryodhana die because of the way that he treated me. And what did Krishna say to her? He says, Draupadi, I understand your pain. Naturally, you would have resentment to what happened to you. But understand, this war is not just about you, about your need for revenge. It is about a much larger whole here. Draupadi didn't understand this. Can you now say Draupadi is completely evil or completely good? Or she too is coming from pressures, binding desires, enemies that cause her to act in this way. What about Arjuna? Arjuna was completely ready in the forest for 13 years, thinking that he is qualified to approach the Kauravas and do what has to be done. He thought that. At the time of the battlefield, what happened? Did Arjuna act, having had 13 years to prepare himself? No. He suddenly got confused. Inner pressures for the family on the other side, inner personal attachments started to flourish. And based on that, he couldn't do what needs to be done. Then Krishna says, look, you're a warrior, you're not ordinary person, you're a prince, you have a larger duty here, you need to protect what matters for the whole generation for many years to come. And he took 18 chapters to convince Arjuna to clear out Arjuna's confusion. So now can you say that if Arjuna didn't have Krishna and he went to the Himalaya for moksha, does that make him completely evil? No. It doesn't. It just makes him confused. That's why we needed Krishna to tell him, you need to stay here, despite there seems to be a better option to go to the Himalaya mountain. Then when Arjuna won Draupadi, and he brought her over to Kunti, and Kunti was busy, and he says to her, hey, mom, look what I brought. What did Kunti say? Oh, why don't you just share it amongst your brothers? What did Arjuna say? Okay, yes, mom, I will do that. He didn't even stand up to her and say, mom, I'm not talking about an object. This is a human being that I brought over because Kunti wasn't looking. In other words, subservience, blind obedience to authority. Yes, mom, I will follow your orders. I will share Kunti. He could have just said, Mom, just turn around. I'm talking about a human being. I can't share a wife with 5 brothers. But he didn't do that. So does that make him completely stupid or some kind of a very intelligent man? No, it just makes Arjuna a confused man. Can you call him evil? No. Can you call him good? No. Can you call him confused? Yes. What about Yudhishthir? Yudhishthir, he's one of those guys that when you call him up and the phone call lasts for 3 hours, he's unable to say, I gotta go. He can't say that because he constantly wants to please you and not form any form of confrontation. So what happened? Someone burns your house, right? And you know who was it, but you don't say anything. You're just like, hey, hello, hi, nice, hello, neighbor, right? You don't have the courage to go over and say what needs to be done. And then a time of, and now Arjuna, amongst the other 3 brothers, while they were sitting down watching Yudhishthir lose the game, lose the chariots and the money and the elephants and the palace and everything else, did they say anything? They could have easily said, Yudhishthir, what are you doing? Stop playing. This is incorrect. Blind obedience. Because they didn't say anything, does that make the 3 brothers completely evil? Or confused, succumbing to inner pressures, inner conditioning? Despite their conscience saying, this needs to be done, what is suppressing their conscience? Their inner pressures of what is the right way to do things. Can you see how complex the humanity really is? You cannot categorically say that a person is evil, like Duryodhana, or the person is good. Every character in the Mahabharata is a reflection of the archetype that we all have in ourselves at one level or the other, at varying degrees, at different stages of life. Sometimes you're more Arjuna, sometimes you're more Duryodhana. So what the book is showing us, the entire Gita, is that rather than categorically attributing values as evil or good, look at these characters, use them as a mirror to see your own parts that could use some fine-tunement, refinement. And based on that, you can have a much smoother life, more aligned to Ishvara's order, which always manifests as harmony. Why is the entire story of Mahabharata one entire story of disharmony? What is that showing you? Every human being carries inner pressures, inner confusions, and it's a difficult journey to realign yourself back onto Ishvara's order. Not even Bhishma, the wisest of the all in the story, could have done it. Not even Yudhishthir, who we all thought was the intelligent guy, not even he could have done it. So what the story wants to show you is that it's not an overnight thing. It is a difficult journey, but it needs to be lived out. Therefore, we cannot categorically state that anyone is evil or anyone is categorically good.
Yeah, I was just thinking, in a way, these questions about people, and our desire to characterize them, as you say, as good or evil, in a way, it's could we see it as falling back upon ultimately a false reference point, which is the existence of the person as an entity? Because on the absolute level, there is no person. There is a flow of behaviors and characteristics. And so if we're trying to sort of categorically characterize a person, we're trying to characterize something that ultimately doesn't exist.
Yeah, no,
I mean, I know that's an ultimate sort of view.
It's the ultimate argument. I get it. At the same time,
but it does. I think it does. At least as far as I'm concerned, it does. Rear its head, even though it's ultimate. It does sort of rear its head and confuse the issue on a practical level, because we're trying to sort of complete our attitude or judgment of something, which essentially isn't there.
And the indicator of what that you're doing is not really fruitful is the very pain that comes along with it. That's Ishwara's indicator saying, my friend, what you're doing,
Yeah.
it's not helping you, it's not helping anyone.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked the question, what is the ultimate indicator, that litmus test, that whether something's presented to you, whether you're passing what's being seen or whether you're failing the test?
Yes. And I find that if I see a fault in another person, I tend to ransack my own behavior then and think, well, don't I do similar things? You know, and usually I can find those faults in myself. They might express themselves differently, right?
Yeah.
And you know, very often a fault in a person has its other side. You know, so a particular energy that a person has may carry them into a certain problematic behavior. But if they didn't have that energy, then they wouldn't have this particular good quality because it expresses itself in this other good way. So you can't go around sort of, you know, whack-a-mole trying to stop people, you know, having these impulses because they often have a good side to them, you know.
Yeah, that's an interesting argument, and I'll extend upon that. If you didn't have people who are slightly misaligned to harmony, could you ever reflect on what is the right thing to do? Could you ever get a mirror? They help you ultimately see whether and what kind of a person you really want to be.
Totally. Mm.
Even a bad bacteria in your system strengthens your immune system. So is it really a bad bacteria?
I hope so.
Without it, right, you have a weak immune system. So,
Mhm.
so see, we have to start changing our views about the world a little bit. So it's not all just this evil. Everything serves a function and has a purpose if you choose to see it that way. As long as I see the pot, I will only see the pot. But what is behind this pot? There's clay. As long as my perception is on the surface level, my entire reality and all my thoughts and behaviors will be in reference to the surface level vision. The moment you just slightly self-reflect, see behind the form, see behind the person, see the story, see the big picture, see that it's just a play. It's going on for eons, a product of cause and effect relationships. What happened 300 years ago is now influencing us today. Never mind 300 years ago, 2007, when the iPhone came out. That's it, game over. Social media, right? The kids started to develop new things, new ways of connecting together. It all changed. So you see, the world today that we're living, it's such a complex unison, a blending of all of the things that have happened in the past. So when your mind just takes one moment to look at the depth behind the worlds that we observe, immediately your entire perception, how you feel about the world changes. It's all about perception, end of the day. That's it, just perception. And that perception is in your power, is in your hands.
So to your second question, how would one know? Would it be that there would be no pain, no personal experience of pain or suffering, whichever word, not due to avoidance or pretense, but due to knowing something for what it is?
Yeah, exactly. So not that pain will go away, it's just that despite the pain, despite the hardships, they're part of human experience, right? Despite all of them, you understand there's something much larger behind all of it. That means no pain, nothing ever becomes bigger than you, the reality. So in other words, what would cause you to pass the test every time you're shown a difficult situation? The answer is you would have to see beyond the form. When your vision is stuck on the form, the entire perception, all thoughts, all energies are in reference to that one pot. And so now I want to what? Get rid of that pot because it's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. And all my opinions will be ugly, bad, right? In other words, my words get limited to what I see. But in reality, this is so much more to this than just the pot. The moment I see this as clay. Immediately my words and thoughts have to correlate to what I see. You see, so we're not telling people, be kinder and, be more empathetic. We're just saying, look deeper. And automatically your behavior, words, and perceptions and everything that follows will change. And it takes just a little bit of effort to do so. That's the power of perception. And so when Krishna says, what is stopping you? What is making you see the spot and not see deeper? Well, the answer is desire alone. Unfulfilled desires. When I see a bracelet or a dress or the girl or whatever it is, what happens? Slowly, that thought starts to build up. It doesn't leave you. You can relate to this, can't you? Does it leave you when you see something of interest? Something that's very attractive to you, not someone else? It doesn't leave you. And it starts to grow more. It produces the thought ultimately, I want this. I want this to be mine. So look at this. Clean slate, blank canvas. Step one, you turn your eyes and you see an object. Step two, that object now captures you. Something triggers something inside. The moment it does that, you start to entertain, give it more fuel, add more imagination. What will it be like to be with this object? How good my life will look like once I'm with this object? How, now your self-worth gets connected to this object. Now I become self-dependent, dependent upon this object, this person, this gadget, this whatever it is, being in my life. So now you were totally okay before this object came into your life. Now that it's here, I can't go without it. Isn't that strange? You were okay with it your whole life. Now it's in my life, I can't go without it. Power of desire. So desire makes you dependent and it takes away that power that you are independent. That's why Krishna calls it here. What does he call it? He calls it an enemy. In other words, now he says, what does this lead to? Anger. There's a story in Mahabharata where Arjuna was in heaven and Urvashi, a pretty woman, saw him in heaven and she thought he looked absolutely handsome. She wanted him now. This guy's mine. But Arjuna was, firm in his resolve and he did his part. So he didn't kind of have any of it. What happened to Urvashi? In heaven, we're not talking about earth. We're supposed to have it all in heaven. She got angry because now this object cannot be mine. So now the very object that cannot be mine, that I was in love with, that I was imagining how good my life will be with it, and having all these mental images of having this object in my life. See, we don't actually kind of get together with an object. What do you get together with ultimately? He gets together with a projection of what you want that object to be for you. That's why most of the time there's disappointment. Oh, I thought she's going to be like this, or he's going to be like that. And when you finally meet him and you've got him, you realize it's not a big deal. Why? Because the imagination was larger than the actual the event. Okay? Now, when that object is not mine or can't be mine or denies itself being mine, what happens next? Are you happy? Oh, no problem. No, I'm so happy. Thank you very much. Or you get shaken. It was denied from me. Anger comes. Krishna calls this, comes from Raja Guna. Raja Guna, just a fancy name for an unsettled mind. So what brings anger? Just the fact that there's anger proves you had an unsettled mind all along. So what do you really want? Do you want the object or do you want a settled mind? What you really want is a settled mind. In other words, my lifestyle doesn't support a settled mind. My lifestyle is all over the place, shaken up, agitated, annoyed by so many things. There's no calmness in my life. Because there's no calmness, what do you want to calm that mind? You want an object, at least according to the values that you think it has for you. And when that object is denied, you get angry. Why? Because what you really wanted is a calm mind. What happens after anger comes? Moha, delusion. Now that anger has come, what kind of thoughts go towards the object? Just a moment ago was the best thing in your life. You were imagining, you were so energized, so much zest came in your body. You felt strong and alive and youthful. And for the first time, you know, the hope was once again flourished. You felt like a young 12-year-old, 14-year-old kid, energy for the first time. Wonderful. This has to happen. You talked about it to your friends. You were happy and your whole world transformed because of what you thought you were going to get. And when we discover, I'm not going to get it, what happens? Anger, frustration, now thoughts of unbecoming nature start to get projected upon the object. How dare he or she? Oh, I didn't want them anyway. They're not smart. They will never be for me. See, look at the follow-up. So what's the ultimate enemy? What caused this whole drama? Go back. Binding desire. See, you may think you need that object and you want that object, whatever it is, dress, gadget, person, experience, occupation, but someone else doesn't think that. So that's your story. It's not a true story. It's a story belonging to one mind. Otherwise, everyone will be thinking the same thing towards the object. So the object has no inherent intrinsic value of attraction. It is my story that says that object is going to be attractive. That's your story. And that story generated by the help of desire. So what's the solution to this? What do you think? What do we do about this? Now that enemy has been pointed out. We manage desires. Do we rid of them?
Just a quick, maybe a quick sociological comment, Andre. In a way, it's our desire, but it's also a desire which is constantly cultivated and stirred up by advertising industry and marketing. I think marketing is the most popular tertiary course in civilization at the moment. So there's a lot of pressure from the collective as well. That's
And at the same time, as we will see, you have a chance to not see that.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of turning on the TV and social media. One browse of social media already implants certain images, and that affects your whole day. You have the chance to say no. And I know it's harder today than ever before, but the point is, what's still there? Power of choice.
Yeah, Andre. So I think when you ask that question, what can we do since we have found the enemy, is to, and we cannot avoid desires as you have been speaking. It's also the creation, like Ishvara's order, but we can implement that karma yoga, right? Neutralize the desires, like samatvam, as you pointed out earlier, towards the result, by treating the result as the prasada, and then and how, as some before, prior to this discussion, we were saying it's very difficult to do it, but then there is that whole thing you explained about how everything is God or Ishvara, the intelligence everywhere, even the laws of karma itself and dharma. Since if it everything created out of one, then everything is Ishvara, and that's how I think it and try to do it. And maybe by practicing, I mean, you'll get better at it.
Yeah, exactly. By practicing, you will definitely start to see that ultimately what you really want is to recognize the presence of Ishvara in all things. What you want is a peaceful mind, a calm, sattvic, non-disturbed mind. And even if you do get this object of your desire, it only has the power to settle this disturbed mind for a while, never permanently. So the solution hasn't really been created, only it's a temporary band-aid. And ultimately, what you really want is a permanent solution. So we have to start thinking differently beyond just this wanting of fulfillment of desires, of binding desires, of course. We're not talking about desires for moksha, desires for connection, desires for unity, desires for peace, desires for reaching out and helping. These are all healthy desires. So we're talking about unhealthy desires that are a little bit distorted in nature.
It's not a quick fix. It will have to come with lot of practice. But finally, it is like you have to detach and call out the mind and say that this is what the mind is saying, and I am seeing the mind say it. I am not saying it. This is the mind's lust. It is not my lust. And there is one very beautiful saying in Hindi that the body is like a bow and the mind is like an arrow. Let the arrow decide wherever it wants to go. Don't let the arrow ride the bow.
Exactly.
You have the control on the bow. So
Yeah.
the arrows can be like the Gyanindriyas and the bow is like Karmindriyas. Let the Gyanindriyas keep going around anywhere. Don't give the support of Karmindriyas.
I think that's from Mundaka Upanishad, the arrow in the mind.
Yeah, I heard one Hindi saying, "Man jata hai to jaane do." It says, wherever the mind wants to go, let it go. Tu sambhal ke rakh sharir. You keep your body and hands together. Then it finally says that if the arrow is not lifted on the bow, what will the arrow do?
Yeah, I think one is to, since it's an enemy, it has to be killed. Just fulfilling it is not going to solve the problem for sure. It's just going to give rise to something else in future. So one way is to see that in the past, when desires have come and got fulfilled, how has it finally left you? Same state that you want something else. So I think the enemy needs to be killed. So you have
in that sense, yeah, killed in the sense of inquiring what will it lead to, because we can't officially kill it.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Yeah, just totally agree with everything you guys were saying, and just I guess echoing with what Vijay was saying, if you inquire into the desire to quote unquote kill it, I think if you were looking at it, it's just as you were saying, and Andre, is you look at the clay instead of the pot as well, you start to see that you'll see that the object is nothing different from yourself. So what is it that you even want, or what can you even get from it? So I think just echoing it, looking past the surface level.
Suppose now you're saying, no, this is all wonderful, but I still, want to go and fulfill my desires. Let's go this path. Okay. Go and do that. Here's the but. Once you do and do what has to be done in the hopes of getting it, understand that you may not get it after all. There are 4 possibilities. You may get it, you may not get it, you may get more of it, and you may get less of it. This is true. Knowing this, it's the only way to live a sane life, until I recognize that though my pursuit of fulfilling desires is okay, I'm not saying stop, it's okay. Understand you may not get it and be okay with that. Simple. If there's this insistence, it must come, and if it doesn't, I'm a failure and that's the end of my life, there is no way you can live a peaceful, restful, calm, equanimous life like that. It's not possible. So you have to be ready for 4 kinds of possibilities.
I was getting a question in my mind. At this stage, how do we differentiate between needs and desires? Sometimes you may need basics of life. If you get that, it is good. If you don't get that, then even your needs will become desires.
Yeah.
So how do you differentiate between, is there a level that up to this level is my need, beyond this level is desire?
Yeah, so we bring 3 questions. We actually have to bring 1 more word. So we got needs, got wants, and we've got desires. So we need to reconcile this. Needs, wants, and desires. Let's just look at want and a need. A want is something that I want for the sake of my own, you could say, right, satisfaction. It's something that I want. But what do I really need? I want Coca-Cola, but what I really need for my survival, for that which is good, is water. What I want is you to say, oh, I love you, and hug me 5 times a day. But what I really need is just a general acknowledgement, just a general support. What I want from you is, what I want is maybe $25 million a year. But what I really need is just a general financial security that can, take me all the way. So want always comes with a condition. It's conditional. It comes with my own attachments, right? This has to happen because your want may be different from my want. Isn't that true? So our wants will always be different, but our needs will always be the same. Need for connection, need for harmony, need for survival, need for home, need for education, need for order. Wants, they are personal. They are called binding desires, whereas needs are universal.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what it means is there is a hierarchy of needs. Some are very elementary, some are which are slightly more than elementary, which become wants, which are even more advanced, become desires.
Yeah, so this now let's bring the word desire. So a need is something that is universal. Okay, a want can be different for every individual. That's based on your own kind of, right, whatever stage you're at. Now, a desire is an expression of your needs and wants. So now that's why we say there's good desires or non-binding desires. They're called your needs. What is a binding desire? That's called your want.
So, Andre, can we say that need is like Ishvara Shrishti and want is Jiva Shrishti? Like that's our want. Yeah. Can we say that?
Yeah, very good context.
Yeah, one more thing we can bring in that without wants you can survive easily. Without needs you will not be able to survive.
Hey, Andre, just talking about the needs and desires. I think ultimately our heart tells us actually what is the need and what is the desire. The answer is there, but we tend to deny it or camouflage it and put it aside and then continue doing what we want to do. So there is an answer within us, but we tend to deny it sometimes. It's just, I know for everything that I do, I think it's a desire, and then it tells me really you don't need that.
Right.
And then I think it's a need.
Right. Okay.
Yes, it's something very important for you.
Okay. Yeah, good. I like the part that you said where do I really want this? Well, maybe my my little, my kind of a desiring self wants this, but do I really need it? In the long picture, no. Gautam?
Yeah, on a lighter note, all the intelligent things that we are saying and have said, and also all the fancy stuff that I have said, I knew it yesterday also, and despite that, I went ahead, considered it, and knew it was a want, and went ahead and bought an iPhone 17.
Oh my
So I knew it. I was considering this. I can live without it, but I could not fight it through. So there's a long way to go. Even if you know the difference in want and need, and you know you don't need it,
yeah,
still to control the mind, it's a long, long way to go. Beyond intellectual knowledge,
yeah, exactly.
the mind is really emotional.
Yeah, and on the lighter note, this is why I'm not so adamant or rigid about these. If you got desires and you say yes to them every time you're a failure, I don't think like this, because see, you got to be kind of light on yourself a little bit. As we said, relax. It's not like you're supposed to be this rigid person. No, I never go for my wants, and I'm this. It will be kind of boring a little bit. So we're not into this thing of total seriousness, but that's okay. I'm coming from.
And then adding to what you are saying and what Ravi said, you have to kill it. If you don't kill it, it will ask for more. It will ask for iPhone 18 again before it is launch date in next September. Again, this trigger will go, because now what I've done is I have inserted, I have strengthened the Vasana that will again start emerging 2-3 months before the launch next year.
Okay.
So if I had managed to kill it, probably next year it won't emerge again.
Okay.
So this has to do with everything.
Okay, now let's ask this. How can this experience of buying an iPhone be a beneficial experience? Now that you bought it, this is game over, but now that you bought it, how can you make this into a positive, self-reflective experience? What would you have to do?
I don't know how to go about it, because I feel I have strengthened that vasana. So each time you take, something that I will not eat this, I will not eat sugary food. The more, if you are able to hold on for a day, you strengthen the willpower to hold on for 2 more days or 3 more days. And if
Okay.
you succumb to it for one day, you will succumb to it next day by breakfast. So the more you fuel it, it will ask for more. What Ravi was saying, I'm with it, and I regret. I know it, and this
Okay.
is every day's challenge.
Okay. This is what I was talking about. Okay, now you're acknowledging. This is so.
If I'm not mistaken, I think we went over this few classes back where we talked about stop and just think, why am I doing this? Do I really need this? I think we went over this, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Okay.
That questioning yourself, right? You have to just stop and question your own self. Why am I doing this? Do I really need it? Is this for my survival? Kind of a question.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah, really quick. Just saying, just like you were saying, what does it actually give me? How's it actually making me happy? But it just popped in my head. I was just thinking, it's almost like these binding desires are kind of screaming out at us as well. They keep coming up, but it's also like they keep proving that they won't fulfill you. And
Mm,
it's almost like they're just giving you another chance again. Hey, I'm here again to show you
yeah.
it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And it just keeps coming up. And it's like, I think you were talking about before, maybe it's
Yeah.
as far as grace as well. Like it's giving your second chances every time is a way to look at it as well. They just keep popping up to say, and they never fulfill us anyway, whatever they are. It's
Yeah.
just popped in my head.
That's good. So in fact, let's not look at this iPhone 17 as a failure. Let's look at it as just one more chance given upon you to reflect upon whether you really needed it and how do you want to think about this next time, and how slightly might you think next time you're tempted for iPhone 18? What slight difference will happen in here, the thinking process, to make you think about that next iPhone 18? So this is your chance now, having already succumbed, game over. That's not the point. So you're not a failure. This is not about failure at all. It's just about being given, by the grace of the Lord, one more chance on a silver platter, saying, hey, here, I've offered you that chance. Now reflect upon it. Look at it. Do you really need it? Now you may say no, but I still went for it. That's fine. But still look at, why did you still go for it? What has it really done for you? Could have you maybe thought of a different option in between? Maybe set a deadline, 30 days, then I will decide. No matter what happens, I will suppress myself for 30 days. And after 30 days, I will see how I feel about it then. Maybe that's one option. Something different. That's the whole point. It's not to get rid of this and I'm a failure. It's to do something different. That's all.
We'll come to this topic next year, August again. I'll remind you.
Can we look at the situation slightly differently? It could be what he has done is nothing unethical. It is perfectly right to have a desire for buying something. He has bought it, a simple exchange of goods and money. God was kind. He had the resources, he had the time and availability, so he bought it. So what's so bad about it? Why should he feel guilty about it?
Yeah, that's good. So Lakshmi has blessed him with some money to be able to buy an iPhone 17. So now we can thank Lakshmi for that. Thank you, Lakshmi. May my resources be used wise next year. Asha?
Did we talk about something, the ladder of fall, when desire leads to delusion, and then the delusion gives rise to wrong thinking or intellect, and is that not the right? Is this not the right place to talk about that?
See, not all desires lead to delusions. Some desires lead to learning lessons. So it does say that desire leads to anger, and then anger leads to moha, and so on. But that's a general framework for us to consider. You want to say?
Correct. Yeah. So because he was able to get it, the iPhone, I mean, we are using this iPhone as an example at this point. So if he hadn't got it, what just the person before him was the last person to get it, then how would have been his reaction and all that? That is what is to be, will probably determine whether that desire leads to anger or not.
Yeah, so in this case, I don't think we can use this anger because
Okay.
he was in control. If someone denied him from getting an iPhone, then we can bring in now possible anger and so on. But this was about
Okay.
managing your own desires. See, if you if you stop yourself from pursuing a desire, you're not gonna get angry at yourself. So it's a slightly different example. So
Oh, okay.
so this specific example is when a desire comes and you know that, if I get this new model, it tells the time just like the previous one. It takes phone calls and internet browsers, it's all the same. Like, what's the difference, right? Now, if you say no to yourself, you actually end up reducing that binding desire. This is going to be in the next message, and this is very powerful. Initially, it's very, very hard to say no. I get it. But the moment you say no, that enough already starts the trajectory where it's much easier to say no next time.
Just going back on what you mentioned before in the class. Okay, we'll take the example of the iPhone. The last iPhone that Gautam probably had was the desire that he bought that iPhone. And now that desire has vanished. Now you're going for another iPhone, the new model or whatever, the latest model. So this is what happens every time something new comes up. You want to get it. So I think that's where we need to look at it, contemplate on it, and think, am I getting it because my friend has it, or because it's the latest model? So the desire shouldn't be working on that scale. Should be working on, do I need it? Do I need the new gadget part of it? The added-ons. If you don't really require it and want to use it, why do you need to get something new? It's awful when you think of a human being looking at either a male or a female, that this female is not satisfactory, I'll go for another one. That happens a lot in our society. And no female is going to be the perfect choice. No male is going to be the perfect choice. We all have flaws, so we all have to meet somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
So that's how I see the whole principle of it.
Yeah, wise words. Lorena?
Sort of similar to what Rani was saying. Firstly, just recognize your own impulses and know your own tendencies, patterns of desires. So looking at yourself and being able to recognize that clearly. And secondly, understanding that everything is born within time and space. So everything new becomes old, essentially. Even things that seem like they wouldn't, everything erodes in time. Therefore, the satisfaction will also erode.
Okay. So it's a little bit of how to think about these things. Okay, Michael?
Just to look at it a slightly different way, like everyone's assuming that Gautam probably shouldn't have bought the phone. But in some sense, unless it's denying something else, like he may have spent the money that should have been used to go visit his family on holiday or something. I don't know, but ultimately, if it's just about fighting that desire to buy the next best thing or next best iPhone, that doesn't seem such a big deal. I mean, I understand why Gautam brought it up and why we're discussing it, but I honestly wouldn't see anything wrong with buying a new iPhone in and of itself.
I had thought about this. I understood this. I knew that this was not my need. So you may have to tell me another argument. Because if a person knows it, that this is not his need, and despite that he goes about it, and he knows it, he is fueling a vasana. How do I counter this? We require this argument.
Okay.
Yes, I require, because I have always thought about it, and I knew it. If I buy it, I will feel that I have bought it, that happiness. I will feel that I have in a way got defeated.
Okay.
Knowing that, I succumb to it.
Okay, good. Okay, this will be all of our homework now that we have been posed this question. So you have made this argument, you've rationalized well in your mind, and still you succumb to it. So everything we're saying now to Gautam, all this rationale, this hasn't worked. He's already gone through this in his mind. Still, there was a force that compelled him. Krishna says that force is binding desire specifically. So then in what way could Gautam have said no? I know he could have said no if he tried a little bit harder, because, I know we say a story, but behind the story, I know you haven't really tried very hard. I know that for a fact. So he could have done that, for example, for a start.
Yeah, so Andrea, I was going to say, and I heard in one of the podcasts on Gita itself. So this basically shows us that our mind, although we know everything intellectually, but we still succumb to the desires because that's the prakriti. Like the desires in our body and it's all prakriti, and you have to train it. You have to train yourself. You have to train the prakriti. Even though intellectually you might know it, but you have to train it, and that's where all that our spiritual things come into place, where your vows or worshipping and everything, right? Like you have to train yourself physically. Like so, we were discussing. We probably at some point have to forcefully deny ourselves, and that's like training our prakriti.
Yes, which someone called titiksha. So in other words, restricting yourself from the small things, those small things also help you in those bigger things. That's one. So training, saying no to the small things helps you say no to bigger things. We will also next week discuss what are the three levels of desires that we deal with. So let's think about this question and how do we manage our desires and stay, focused on the bigger picture. Purnamadav, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnameva avashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.